Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is a company run by Joe Ross, who's a former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, and former Army officer. Thanks to Higher Echelon for always sponsoring our podcast. We also want to tell you we have a official photographer for Black Knight Nation this season. It's DTS Production Agency. They're providing game day photos of the 2025 season. Those photos are available for parents and fans to download on their website, dtsproductionagency.com. So you can check out those photos of last night's season opening game against Tarleton State, Seth. And you and I were both there. And it was Army lost the game 30-27 in double overtime, a 4-hour game that didn't have to be 4 hours long. It didn't have to be 4 hours long. That game probably should have been over an hour before it ended because I'll just go back to it. And, if you guys, please check our YouTube channel out. I posted a really quick recap from the field after the game. That's up with a couple of my initial thoughts. You can find that on our YouTube channel. You have Jeff Monken's press conference. You have Caleb Fortner and Noah Short also reacting to the Army season opening defeat. You have we have all kinds of stuff on the YouTube channel. Please check that out. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, comment, and all that fun stuff. So, that game should have been over an hour earlier, because of one play call really changed the outcome of the game. I'm just going to say the outcome of the game. When you're driving the ball down and you're up by 7 and it's under 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and what do you do best, Seth, when you're Army? You run the football, right? You run the football. And for that pass play to be called in that situation and for the execution to happen, and it just turns the game around. You run the football 3 times. At worst, you kick a field goal. It's going to be a short field goal. You go up by 2 scores and make Tarleton State score on you twice. And the thing is, to be honest with you, Tarleton State scored in regulation only one more time in that game. And why? And what made it easier for them to score? A fumble at the Army 20-yard line. They had a short field, and they scored a touchdown to tie the game. If you're in that position with under 10 minutes left, and you had run the football down to the 17, I think it was on a Dwayne Coleman run. I could be wrong.
It was.
You're in position to eat more clock, right? By running the football 3 more times. Instead, you throw the football. And I have to give credit to the Tarleton State player. I was just watching the game for the first time, the rerun. I just fast forwarded to a spot in the game. The same Tarleton State player was involved in all 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and a fumble recovery in 3 straight Army possessions in the second half. I mean, they had the game. They didn't execute. And I don't know what that – I asked Jeff Monken, were you just trying to catch him off guard on that pass to the tight end that got intercepted? He mentioned tendencies, and they saw certain tendencies that, that made that play call. They've been practicing it all week. You could practice a play all week. You don't necessarily have to call it, Yeah, I don't know. Your thoughts? I'm gonna get on the phone for a second. Give us your thoughts.
Before I give you my thoughts, North Dakota's up 35-31 with the ball with 2 minutes left against Kansas State. So that's I don't know if you call it. North Dakota's a good team, good FBS team. And they're taking it to Kansas State 35-31. They got the ball on their own 41-yard line, 2nd and 11. So who knows? I totally agree. I think everybody in the press box agreed with you. You weren't up there at that point. Or maybe you were. I'm not sure. Were you up there in the press box when
Yeah, I was.
Okay. Everybody was talking about it. That's all everybody talked about for the rest of the game and even before the press conference got going. We do not understand why they would go and try to a pass like that into coverage. I know they talked, Monken talked about maybe somebody else being open, but it wasn't necessary. Army, like you said, play it safe take some clock off. There was about 11 minutes left. Take some clock off. You maybe get it down to 9, even 8 minutes if you get a first down again. If you score a touchdown off the runs, you score a touchdown. You're up by 14. But you go with a kicker that he had a lot of faith in at that moment in time. And you're up. Hopefully, you're up 10 points with 8 minutes left in the game, 8.5 minutes, and you're kicking off. And who knows what happens? Everybody was kicking the ball into the end zone, so they're starting the game they're starting down 10 points on the 25-yard line, probably. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It goes against everything that is Army football for the last 10 years, 12 years. And no one gets it. And, it just changed the whole game. Now, they didn't score on that drive. They punted back to Army, but Army, fumbled moments later, like you said, on the 20-yard line or so. And then they scored a quick touchdown on a pass to the tight end, wide open over the middle, tying the game. And then, of course, we went back and forth a little bit. Missed the game winning field goal with 7 seconds left, but that's the way it goes. But I just don't get it. I totally agree with you. I don't get it.
You know what, too? Here's my thought on that. I was thinking about this. I did rest a little bit today on Saturday. Did watch some other college football. I wasn't sulking, over what happened last night. But you know what? By not making that decision, too, the game extended. And you had guys get hurt toward the end of the game that are pretty darn valuable that maybe weren't going to be in that situation if the game wasn't that close. You have Dwayne Coleman go down for the second time. He doesn't return with a minute left. You had Cody Harris-Miller go down twice. And Cody Harris-Miller, after he went down the first time, I saw him running up and down the sidelines when I was down by the field. And he got back in and he got hurt again. Cody Harris-Miller is a valuable player to your defense. And,
very important.
Did you really – this game should not have been in overtime. This game should not have been an overtime game. Army should have took care of business in regulation. That interception is so darn key to the game, in my point. It's definitely a turning point, regardless of whether Tarleton State scored or not. It's just – I don't know, and I feel like you kind of emptied a lot of your playbook to try to beat Tarleton State. You try to pull everything out of Tarleton State. Bottom line is watching the little piece that I just rewatched. The offensive line versus Tarleton State's defensive line is a no contest. It's a Tarleton State victory. And to not be able to move the ball against Tarleton State on I counted, Seth, 21 first down plays that they had in the second half and overtime. On 10 of those plays, they got 1 yard or less. Almost 50% of those first down plays, they got 1 yard or less. And I believe the two of the 3 turnovers were on first down.
Wait, give that to me again. You're saying we had 21 first down plays in the second half?
21 first down plays in the second half and overtime. A play that was on first down. A first down.
Army had 21 first down plays.
It doesn't necessarily mean they have 21 first downs. Possessions. They probably had 5 to 7 possessions in that span.
That's a lot. Yeah. The offensive line didn't show up. Listen, let's give Tarleton some credit. They were bigger than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, they are.
Listen, they came in to make a statement. They wanted to win the game. I was talking to one of the film guys up in the press box right before the start of overtime, and he's like, "Boy, we wanted. Never been to New York before. Thought they were playing the game in buildings next door. Didn't realize they were upstate New York, not New York City, until he got here." But he was like, "Hey, we needed this game. This is the one FBS team we're playing all year. They were talking up Army big time. American champions. 12-2, nationally ranked last year. They were pumped for this game since it was announced." He said, and they came in and give them credit. They played pretty good. They played great. They played pretty good. They played good enough to win, and you got to give them credit. But I agree with you. Our offensive line. I hope they just one game and next week they'll be different. But I have to hope that I hope and pray that they're going to get better next week. Otherwise, we're in for a long season because you can't get your offense going. Army's still a running team except for a pass like they did most of the time. Hey, also I got to say this. two of our biggest plays were pass interference calls that we benefited from. Correct calls, both times, correct calls. But, we didn't see much offense there. Noah Short had another good game. Give credit to Coleman. I thought he did an admirable job. Our running backs did okay, but it wasn't enough to win, and we didn't.
Yeah, the plays are the big plays. There were a little bit more big plays than I thought there would be. Actually, I thought the Army would be more of a grinded team this year, and they're usually a team that's going to wear down the opponent, right? They're going to wear down an opponent by running the football, and by the fourth quarter, they're going to tire opponent out. They didn't tire out Tarleton State. Tarleton State still had plenty of gas in the tank, and you look at the celebration of that team once their kicker made that 37-yard field goal in the second overtime. I mean, they probably could play another 3 or 4 overtimes if they wanted to. Tarleton State, they would have been ready for it. And I'm not saying Army wasn't ready to play in this game. It's a season opening game. Of course, you're ready to play. You're fired up, but I don't know, that Tarleton State crowd, it wasn't big, but it was loud. They brought a decent amount of people, and at times it was louder than the Army fans. Yeah. Army fans seemed to lose interest in this game, at least where I was sitting. There was not much of a Mikey Stadium vibe. I was sitting on the opposite side of the core, so I was sitting in the south end zone, which is closer to the Tarleton State people, but there wasn't really a lot. I mean, you're hanging on the edge of your seat. You're hoping your sophomore kicker, who's in his first big situation, big game, makes some kicks. It shouldn't come down to this. Tarleton State is a very good team. Tarleton State will, and I said it, in the prediction time. I don't like to take credit for things, but I said it in the prediction time story that this will be Army's toughest home game of the season. And I think it was. I think Tarleton State could go into the American Conference and certainly compete in the American Conference and beat like the bottom of the American Conference, no doubt. Would it have its problems with Memphis and UTSA and South Florida and Navy? Likely they would, but they would probably give them a pretty good ball game. They probably would give them they're an FBS. Their quarterback would put at Washington State. They have some players that are FBS players on their team in past, and I don't know.
I have no doubt that there'll be a FBS team in 5 or 10 years. They don't change the rules. I have no doubt they'll be in a Conference USA or maybe even in the American. Who knows? But they're not staying at an FCS school. They have bigger fish to fry, especially with other state schools down there like UTSA, like North Texas. Moving up, Texas State moving up, and some of them having some success. So I think this was a big win for them. I think they came in, they really wanted it. They were not a bad team. I'm going to say this. I was driving home for our talk tonight. And I'm saying to myself, boy, how come we're not playing a Patriot League team in game one? Why Navy's beating up on VMI, Air Force is beating up on Bucknell. You got Boston College playing Fordham. You got other schools in that conference, playing, all over the country. Why aren't we playing a Patriot League team or somebody at that level? Why did we get Tarleton State? What happened here? And they were a late ad, as we talked about when they added them late last year. I'd love to know, and I'm going to ask. I'd love to know why, Tarleton State. Listen, they're on the schedule. You got to play them. Okay, that's the way it is. But why were they on the schedule in the first place? And I'd like to know the answer to that because, we played a pretty tough team. Well, who knows? These guys can win the FCS championship. I think they're that good. They can make I don't know if they're going to win it, but they can make us. They could be a semifinalist in the FCS. And those teams are good. As I said, North Dakota still hanging on here. 120 longest 2 minutes in college sports. Beating Kansas State. So we'll see. They're the best FBS team, one of the best 2 or 3. So there are some very good teams there. So I think we may have gotten unlucky and played a team that's on the rise and that was hungry and desperate for a win against an FBS team, and we were there. We were the team.
Well, I think that also I think Army fans would hope that like the Tarleton State Texans run a table a little bit and get to that FCS playoffs and do some damage in it, because then they can say, but then there's still no reward. I mean, you're the higher level, you're the FBS team. You're at home. You had won 9 straight games at home. You won 9 of 11 openers under Jeff Monken. This is a game that was right there for you, that it was a little bit of a battle back and forth. You had control of the game. You had control to really put Tarleton State behind the 8 ball there, and you just didn't do it. You just didn't do it, and you just that I can't. I just can't. Sometimes you can't make things up. Sometimes, Seth, you can't make things up. So,
as Monken said, and you said earlier here, three consecutive turnovers. That's not Army football. It hasn't been Army football. Certainly not last year. They lost a turnover battle 3-0. The offensive line didn't show up. The entire offense was not handling their assignments when they went outside to Noah or when Coleman tried to go outside himself. Tarleton State made some changes at halftime. This has been a pet peeve for me for years now. Army doesn't seem to make the changes as much as the competitors do at halftime. And
we're not in the locker room. That's hard to tell. We're not in the locker room.
Well, what I see, end result, that's what I see. I didn't see Army making changes they needed to make. Again, it's a loss. It's a loss for all the reasons we said. I will say I thought the defense played pretty well. They were in there. They were on the field a lot, and they were in some tough situations. A couple of mistakes, couple of key mistakes. That touchdown at the end. But I thought they played pretty well overall. As we talked about earlier today and yesterday, the middle of the field was open a lot. And, another team's going to take advantage of that. Maybe Kansas State next week. Everybody's looking at the film, and they're going to say this. So I hope they're going to address that during practice, which starts tomorrow. I wouldn't want to be in that practice tomorrow. They're going to work these kids really hard over the next 4 or 5 days now for Kansas State. So
I think that, it's going to be a long season if Army's defense, it doesn't play their assignments. If they don't play their assignments and opposing teams can just run the football and have those big run plays against them, it's going to be a long season. I remember last year, the defense did not give up a lot of big plays, 20 yards or more plays. It was definitely an Army's offensive favor over the opponent's offense in that situation. You can't give up those huge runs. And if Jackson Hammond is in the game for that one long run, he's a track guy for Army. They're going to score they're going to score a touchdown. So I mean, their fit's got to be better. Tarleton State did a good job of blocking them up front, to be honest with you. They sealed off Cody Harris-Miller. They had the other defensive end to Cody's, I believe, right side blocked pretty well, opened up some holes. They did the RPO game that Army never really – they slowed them down. Yeah, they had the 1-2 yard gains toward the end and, late in overtime, but – the gashing plays cannot happen. They just can't happen.
Also, the tackling has to be better. They're tackling too high, giving them some extra yards each time guys are breaking through. Again, Monken made mention of it again. He's, tackling is super important. It's probably right behind, the fumbles. You got to tackle. You got to when you get them, you got to bring them down, and they weren't doing that a lot. Again, they had two fast running backs, and this quarterback was. Like you said, Washington State. He was
efficient. He didn't do too much damage. He was efficient. I thought the Army corners did a pretty good job against the receivers of Tarleton State. I thought at times Justin Weaver and Jaden Mays were doing a really good job. Throw in Jackson Hammond too. He made a good play at the goal line where he pushed the guy out of bounds, preventing them from scoring. Seth, I'm going to have to put you on mute real quick. Brian, let's get to Brian's quote. Guys, if you're watching right now, please feel free to send your comments and comments and questions to us. We will enter them. We will answer them. I'm sorry. It felt like they might have stayed with Helms after halftime. Tough runner. Kel Helms had to come into the game because Dwayne Coleman was beat up. In the second quarter, Kel Helms took over inside the red zone, right? He ran a play for a couple yards, and then he scored his first career touchdown on a one-yard run. I think it was Army's second touchdown of the game. I could be wrong. It was the second touchdown after Dwayne Coleman. Then Helms had to come in again when Coleman got hurt late in the game and took over for overtime. The only thing I will say, you're right, Brian. Kel Helms is a tough runner. If you're going to run the football, 95% of the time, Kel Helms is your guy to bring in those situations because, Coleman's a better passer. I'll just leave it at that. Coleman's a better passer, and pretty much if you have Kel Helms in the game, teams are going to know you're running the football. You're running the football. So we'll see what happens. Coach said that I saw Dwayne Coleman running off the field after the game, but Coach said he felt that Helms at 100% was better than a hobbled Dwayne Coleman at the end of the game. You're wondering why? Why is Dwayne Coleman not in the game in overtime? Is he hurt? I guess he was hurt to a point where
it's the coach's decision. So I mean, that's what he gets paid for. So I can't doubt that. I mean, I'm sure he knew what was going on. He obviously was hurt. He had to come out of the game. I guess he just felt that that was the way to go. I mean, I can't blame him for that. Listen, these kids get hurt. That was a tough game. It was a long game. I mean, a lot of kids got hurt on both sides, I can't blame him for that.
It seemed like Tarleton State players, at least one per series, was going down banged up and stuff like that. And, I think it was mostly Dwayne Coleman and Cody Harris-Miller injuries for Army. I thought that maybe Casey Larkin might have got banged up a little bit. I could be wrong. But, you got Kansas State next week, and we're saying, okay, Kansas State came in preseason ranked. Army's going to have a really tough time. If they can't beat Tarleton State, how are they going to go in and give Kansas State a run for their money? But Seth, do you have a final?
No, it's still going on, but Kansas State's ahead now. They scored a touchdown, 38-35. North Dakota has the ball on their own 35, 28 seconds left. So I need to get a field goal, get the field goal range.
So Kansas State is being taken to the end by North Dakota. So you just never know. You never know. But you didn't want a game where I kind of tweeted this out I posted your game story, Seth, by tweet, like everything that you didn't want to go wrong for Army kind of went wrong toward the end for Army. You had to keep Dwayne Coleman healthy, right? You didn't keep Dwayne Coleman. You had to have healthy. You couldn't turn the ball over. You had 3 turnovers. You needed good offensive line play. You didn't get good offensive line play. There's no secrets to Army success. They gotta be tougher than the opponent. They gotta be more efficient. They gotta execute better. They didn't really do that. And you want to say missed assignments. You want to say, play calling, whatever. The thing is,
I got the feeling they just weren't ready for this. The coaches, the players. I don't know why they weren't ready, but I just got the feeling maybe they were looking at K-State. Maybe the Friday night game. I don't know what the reason is, but my feel was that they just didn't. It didn't click.
Maybe that's it. That's it, because it's hard to buy that you weren't ready for it when you saw this team. Granted, they went to Portland State and FCS team, but they beat them 42-0. This wasn't you weren't getting this team for their first game of the season, and you didn't know what they were going to do. Didn't have any.
They had film. Hey, they didn't make the tackles. They didn't make the blocks. They didn't complete the passes to the right team. And at the end, it's very simple. It was a bad second half, probably the worst second half of Army football I've seen since pretty much in the Monken era. Certainly since the Fordham game that they lost in the 15. I wasn't at the Yale game, but I know that was a disaster too. But that was.
You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful with that stuff because the second half of Navy last year wasn't the greatest half of football, Seth. So you gotta be careful when you make those statements.
Okay, right, but
you gotta be careful. Yeah, one of them, yes, maybe, but I don't know. It's just.
It's one of the worst, so it's still right there. Okay, maybe it wasn't the worst. Maybe it's the second or third worst, but it wasn't a well played game. And now we can just sit there and hope that they bounce back and they learn something. The good news is this game doesn't count in terms of the Americans, standings. You didn't lose to Navy or Air Force, and you can bounce back from this. So maybe lesson learned, and that's all we can hope for. That they get back into it. They learn some things from it. The players, the coaches, what the team can do, what they can't do. Hey, it's the first game of the season. College football, you don't get any scrimmages against other teams or any preseason games.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so you're going in and you're playing against each other in scrimmages, but it's a little bit different than the real deal. And so in the real deal, they got taught a lesson yesterday. What happens now? That's the key thing. How do they bounce back against a good Kansas State team, which it looks like they're going to win? North Dakota's a good team. So and they lost to what is it? They lost to Iowa State last week, and they're a good team. So they're a good team. How do you bounce back? What do you learn from this? As they said, they're going to get their act together tomorrow, and they're going back to practice, going back to work. And it's going to be an interesting week of practice at West Point. I guarantee.
Get the lunch pails out. Let's we mentioned like things that didn't go right for Army in this game. I want to get into a couple positives before we get off here. I'll give one, and maybe you can think of one too. Maybe we'll bounce them back and forth, Seth. I'm going to say the special teams play, especially Trey Benson's punt returns. I think he averaged like 16, 17 yards a punt return. I know he had that big punt return that got Army going a little bit, put him in, on the other side, on Tarleton State side of the field. I think he also had a return that was called back because of a penalty. So he looked pretty good as a punt returner, certainly. That's not something where Army usually, Tyrell Robinson's been the Army been a really good punt returner, kick returner for Army in recent past, and did have a touchdown return in the game. But I mean, maybe they found something in Trey Benson. Maybe they have found something on special teams, which is a good thing, because you weigh the positive of him having a good return day versus the negative of the kicking game, which you missed 2 out of 4 field goals. The field goals are probably going to outweigh the negatives, probably going to outweigh the positive, but at least that is a bright spot for me. What do you got, Seth?
Well, I think I'll go back to the defense. I thought the defense played pretty well, and I was impressed there. I agree with the kick return game was good. Punting was okay. There was one shank, I think, for 23 yards. But besides that, I thought he kicked pretty well. Noah Short, I've been a fan for 3 years now. I thought he played pretty well. I thought the running backs did the best they could considering the situation. Coleman, I started out first, like on the way home last night, thinking, I don't know. And now I'm kind of like saying, you know what, in those circumstances, I thought he did okay. He's in a tough situation, starting only his second game. And, he has a lot to play up to, with Bryson Daly from last year. But I thought, he did okay, threw the ball all right. Kale ran the ball well. I'm questioning his passing, but, we'll see if he comes back. Somebody said to me today, he guarantees that before the end of the season, a freshman will be starting at quarterback for Army.
Maybe.
Interesting comment. I don't know. I mean,
maybe it's possible. The two guys that they have, Bryson Luter and God's Power Hawaii, is they got some. Watch them in scrimmages. There's talent there, and we'll see. I mean, they're probably like 2, 3, or 4 right now. So in the depth chart, somewhere around there. One of them's traveling to Kansas State, I tell you that much. So I don't know which one is, but one of them's going to have to travel to Kansas, especially with Coleman maybe dinged up a little bit. Maybe both of them are traveling to Kansas State.
I wouldn't surprise me one bit.
So that's an experience. We got to, here's the thing too. We talk about the perimeter blocking a little bit. They did not have Liam Fortner, their senior wide receiver, who started 13 games last year, who's one of the best blocking wide receivers maybe in the country. They didn't have him for that game. They didn't have Toby Alawale, junior wide receiver, also for the game. They were out. Those are Army's 2 top wide receivers. I want to give credit to Brady Anderson in that 35-yard catch that he had, that diving catch that he had in his first, I believe, Army football game. Great catch by him. He didn't see the football after that. I don't know. I mean, the passing game was kind of, Noah Short, throw that one over the seam to Brady and try to hit the tight end twice. And both times you tried to hit the tight end, there was multiple double coverage and then triple coverage. You tried a shot to the tight end in overtime, which was, I'm watching that and I'm scratching my head a little bit, because Tarleton State already kicked their field goal, right? So you score a touchdown, you win. I guess you're going for the touchdown on that play with that throw, but you're losing it down. You're losing it down. And I was it 2nd and 7? I could be wrong. It might have been 2nd and 8 or something like that. But you waste it down 3rd and 8, you run it, and then you got to kick the field goal.
I guess they felt though they couldn't run up the middle. They had no success all game. It was either run outside and hope for the best there. They had a couple of times they got hit for losses, or give it a shot. Go for these things. Yeah, you brought up today when we were talking this morning about using 2 tight ends for the running game, and I agree with that. I mean,
maybe because with all due respect, Brady Anderson was a decoy. That wide receiver. Now Kayvon Pointer. I saw Kayvon Pointer blocking a lot into the secondary. Fine. But they're decoys, they're decoys. And I don't know, you bring in another tight end, maybe you could. Here's another thing that I didn't see. Is it a QB follow that they call it, where they send Jake Brandino up the whole fullback and the QB follows? Did we see that at all? Did we see? That's something that they were pretty.
We did not see that, no.
You have yeah, sure. Jake Rendina's lost maybe 15 pounds. He's still 235, 40 pounds, coming through as an extra blocker. I don't know. To me, that the middle linebacker for Tarleton State, number 12, his name is escaping me. He made a lot of plays in this game, and that could have been maybe do they call it a force multiplier? Whatever. It could have been a hat on that guy, and maybe every once in a while. Man, I have a video that I can't post about what a Tarleton State player at the end of the game, and he was the one, number 12, kind of got into they shouldn't have doubted us. Basically, that's what he said with the clean version. But I just
you got to say one thing at the end of the game. For the Army alma mater, that whole team came over and they were calling each other over. And they stood behind the Army players you don't see every team do that. I thought that was a class act. And obviously I put that on the coaches. They must have said something before the game, win or lose, we're going to go over there for their alma mater and respect West Point. And they did. And, that earned a lot of people were talking about. I was still in the press box at that point. A lot of people in the press box were talking about that, and they were impressed with that. And believe me, a lot of people were very tired in that press box after a 4-hour game.
Yeah, and just another note, when I was doing the post game on the field after the Tarleton State, they ended their night with they got the team together on the south side of the field, and they had a team prayer. And that's the videos up on our Black Knight Nation X, and I thought that was it puts things in perspective a lot. It puts things in perspective. Yeah, they played their butts off, and but then at the end, they got together for one last time on the field.
You want to hear something weird that I was told? They flew into Stewart, which is 10 miles north of West Point, but they stayed, according to this one guy, I have to believe him, they stayed in Fort Lee, New Jersey, at a hotel in Fort Lee, New Jersey, which is, 45, 50 miles south of West Point?
About an hour away, probably.
Yeah, an hour away. And you know what? With traffic on a Friday afternoon, they kind of know what time they got up there. I'm sure it was early, maybe before traffic. But I live in New Jersey, and I ran into some traffic at 3 o'clock. I'm sure they left earlier. But wow, these guys were all over the place. They stayed in Fort Lee. Kind of you would think they'd find someplace closer to stay. But they stayed in Fort Lee, and a lot of the support people went to Times Square. First time a lot of them ever been to New York, and they were telling me their experience. They all bought sneakers. They said everybody. I guess there must be a good deal on sneakers in Times Square.
Let's guys, if you have any comments, we're going to be wrapping this up in a few minutes. We really appreciate you watching. If you have any comments, we'll get to them. Please send them to us. We'll post them like Scott. Scott, we appreciate you watching. Coaches will fix mistakes. Army will bounce back. Well, it's a good test. certainly a good test. We'll see what this team is made of. It's not like they don't have they're going to be going against a really good Kansas State team on the road. It'll be a test to see how much they can bounce back and how much of a fight they can put up against Kansas State, and can they be in the game in the fourth quarter like North Dakota was tonight, and maybe can they pull out that game that they haven't pulled out against like a power 4 team, a ranked power 4 team, or a highly regarded power 4 team in the Jeff Monken era. Yeah, I think that, this is going to be, we'll find out a lot about Army. And, I think that we pretty much have touched on a lot. Seth, is there anything else you want to bring up? I mean, I had a lot of spit and vinegar, earlier today. Now that we're a little in the wee hours, I'm like, I think I probably got most of my points out. What did you want? Yeah,
I just want to finish on, 2 years ago we lost to LSU 62-3, I think, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they lost the next game to UMass, but then they won 4 in a row, including Navy and Air Force, and won the CIC. So yeah, this is a tough loss. You got 11 games left. You got the whole American Conference schedule ahead of you. K-State, they did win. They're going to be a tough game next week, and let's just hope that these guys get better during practice. They get healthier. The ones who are injured get healthier. And next week against K-State, we don't get too beat up against a very physical team. Hopefully they'll win, but hopefully also don't get too beat up. And then they start the American schedule with a couple of games. As you said before, this was definitely, in my opinion, in your opinion, the toughest home game this year. So they lost it. It was close. They could have won. They should have won. They didn't. Now let's move ahead with 11 more games, including, you want to get into, you want a winning season. You want to win the American. You want to beat Navy. You want to beat Air Force. There's a lot to play for still this year. And there's a lot of talent on this team. We didn't see all of it this week. I think the offensive line is going to be much better next week and going into the future. I just think so. So we'll see what happens. Tough loss, ugly loss, long game. Didn't get home until 12:30. Wrote the story. Was up late. So, but you know what? They're a good team. Tarleton State's a good team. They're gonna be. We're gonna hear that name more and more now.
Oh, we'll see. And what Noah Short said, I think he said a couple of years back, they lost the opener at Louisiana Monroe, a game that they shouldn't have lost. They lost that game 14-7, and they came back and won the CIC trophy that year. So they have seniors on the team that have been through a lot. They have seniors that let's get to Scott real quick. K-State will be tough. Avery Johnson is an exciting player. Seth is right, lot of the season left. And yes, problems are fixable. Army has plenty of talent. They lost a lot. We have to say that, Army's lost a lot of talent from not just the guys graduating last year, losing guys that are making impacts, for FBS teams now. I mean, Kleb Lubin, who only played his freshman year at Army, had 2 sacks for Louisville today. You have Ella Mendoza lining up and playing on Georgia's very talented defense, getting snaps on their defense. You got Isaiah Austin catching a touchdown pass for James Madison today. You got Kanye Udo playing right about now for Arizona State. Donovan Platt, I was watching their game against Coastal Carolina, Virginia. He's at Virginia now. He had a couple pass defenses. That's a lot of talent to. Not only are you graduating seniors, you're losing talent. They can say, "Oh, it's they developed the football talent at Army, right, Seth? They developed the football talent. They got to develop more. They got to develop more. That's as simple as that.
To your point, you only lose transfers. Graduation's graduation. Can't do anything about that. But you only lose transfers for 2 reasons. One, they're not playing, and you don't hear about those guys. Nobody knows their names, so they're going to go someplace else to play. And 2 is that they're pretty good, and somebody else notices them. With Kanye, especially with these other guys. They were pretty good players, and you're going to Georgia or Louisville or Arizona State. These are named schools, and it's tough to play there. And these guys are playing. So even James Madison, it's a pretty good school. It's a pretty good program. Yeah, they're away a lot of guys, and Jeff Monken, give the guy kudos. I was really impressed with him yesterday in the press conference. He stood there and took our questions. This guy's done a wonderful job developing talent. And now with the transfer portal, and it's affecting Army and affecting the other service academies a little bit. He's got to make do like everybody else in sports got to make do in college sports, but he has a little tougher road like they do at, Navy and Air Force because of the restrictions. Kudos to him. This is the first game of the post Bryson Daly era, and we lost it, but I'll say it one more time. 11 games left. More important than this game. Every one of these games is more important than this game. It's happened to be the first one. If you're going to lose one game all year, you're going to win 11. The other 11 are more important than this game, believe it or not.
Yeah, Scott said next man up hurts to lose talented guys, shows the effectiveness of Army recruiting. I will say this real quick, and then we'll get off. So they play Kansas State Saturday. Then they have a bye week before they play their next their home American Conference opener against North Texas. So you might as well just load up against Kansas State, give it all you got like they normally do, and let the chips fall where they may. Make Army football put a good showing for Army football, because last night was not a good showing for Army football. It was not a good showing. And, defending American Conference champs or not last year in the past, still not really Army football. It wasn't really what kind of you expect. The mistakes, the, turnovers and the like that we've become accustomed to for Army football, especially after last year. So they got to get it together, and we'll see what happens next week. Kansas State, it's a 7:00 game. Will we be right on the air after it? Probably not. We'll probably be back next Sunday for a podcast recap. And we thank everybody for joining us today. One more comment for Scott. I agree. Well said, Sal. Thank you, Scott. Good to have you. Good to have you in my corner. Somebody agrees with me, right? Seth, not too many people agree with me in the press box.
This guy knows. Sal knows every player on the field on every play. He knows who's on the field, who's come off, who hasn't played. It's amazing to sit next to Sal in the press box. It's amazing. So
thank you for the attaboy, Seth. That's what I get paid for here on Black Knight Nation, to know this stuff. So guys, please check out our YouTube channel. Like I said, our subscriptions, we're closing in on 1,300 subscribers. If we can get to 1,300 subscribers by the Kansas State game, that would be excellent. Appreciate everybody watching our stuff there, like this podcast. Check out Black Knight Nation. We have Seth's game story. I'm going to write my quick thoughts. I'll probably get that up probably tomorrow night before your Labor Day. Enjoy your long weekend, guys, and get ready for some more Army football on Saturday against Kansas State, next Saturday against Kansas State, and hopefully we'll have some better stuff to talk about. Thanks for joining us.
One more thing I want to mention real quickly. Monken has his press conference on Tuesday, and it should be pretty interesting, and we'll be there. You might be there in person. I'll be there on the internet, and it'll be an interesting press conference, I think, because he'll be talking not only about the last game, but also about the game coming up. So that's going to be pretty interesting.
We'll see what happens.
Right about it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. I think I could be taking the trip up to West Point on Tuesday for that one. Guys, again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have this loaded up to audio as soon as we can. And everybody have a great night. Seth, thank you, and we'll be back soon.
Good night.